despite the enthusiasm around artificial intelligence, I'm still looking for a dam that has really strong base capabilities.
What would be really good is the end of wheel reinvention in digital asset management.
When we think about AI and DAM and all these systems that work together, aren't we talking about going from more of a passive repository to sort of an active and intelligent engine?
Today, our subject is really talking about something we can call the damn trends of 2026.
Guys, what I'm going to say. Provenance, authenticity, traceability.
All of these things are, again, evolving. Nothing stays the same.
Seems to be these two schools of what a dam should be.
Definition of dam is going to become so wide that it has to break apart into different constituent products.
Thank you everybody to be there for this new DAM session. We are super delighted to get the best breed, I will say, of DAM systems. So first of all, thank you, Jennifer, regarding as a voice of the customer to share with us your insight and more or less the right path to take to manage a DAM system. We have also Erica, who has a great experience alongside all the marketing sides. We have Paul Mesher, the visual traceability, C2PA and metadata wise, and of course my colleague Raf, chief editor of DAM News. So just maybe in order to start with, and because it has to be an open discussion, a fire chat, so if you can yourself present very quickly in more details what you are doing at that moment. Jennifer, Erica?
Yeah, well, hello everyone. My name's Jennifer Anna, and I've been a digital asset management practitioner for about 15 years plus, working across many different industries: advertising, NGO, cultural heritage, and now staffing recruitment at CHG Healthcare. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Erica Goldwater. I'm a fractional CMO, VP of Marketing at Chameleon Collective. And prior to that, I'm the Director of Global Communications and Content at a PIM company called In River, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. I have dabbled in technology and MarTech all my life and love talking about this topic.
Thank you, Erica. Paul?
Hi, Paul Melcher here. I'm a consultant. I work with companies in the visual tech space, helping them grow and expand and redefine their product as they enter the market. Happy to be here today.
So maybe, Raf, you can make a quick introduction about, as I'm saying, by DAM News, we are trying most of the time to get an agnostic approach. We are more or less bringing some analysis of any DAM systems, but maybe I think you are the best position to explain what is DAM News since so many times, 17 years, something like that. So.
I think I've been involved in it since 2012. I've been doing DAM for over 30 years. Developing DAMs, consulting about them, project managing their implementation, so on and so forth. In terms of DAM News, we look at the market in a number of different ways. One of them is something we call the open specification, which is basically it's like I don't want to say generic, but it's like a cross-functional overview of an ideal DAM system. What we tend to find with analyst reports is there's two issues. Either they're not really neutral because the vendors are kind of tacitly paying to appear in them or having to pay for reprint rights, something like that. Or the other issue is that they're out of date because the systems change and they get new features added and so on. So we wrote a thing called the open specification, which covers most of the functionality, probably all of the functionality in a DAM, and we update that quite frequently. If you've got a consultant, they can use it to assess different products and compare and contrast them. If you don't have a consultant, you don't have the budget, or you just don't have the inclination, you can use it yourself to go through that. and it's editable by the community, and it covers, as I said, all of the different aspects like rendition, searches, storage, retrieval, etc., etc.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, because in fact, it's true that many visitors and customers are always asking us when they are searching a dam system, what is a dam system? And by the way, we know that it has to be an engine for any type of files, even with large files. On the other side, it's an engine for the metadata. So, very in a quick, some quick bullet points. How you can be sure that you have a dam system and not something that looks like as a CMS system. What makes the difference from any other systems?
In terms of, as I said, comparing this with analyst reports, it's more like analyst reports a static narrative. This is more like it's like a living document that can change basically. It can update whenever we like, and as I said, it can get contributions from the community also. You can actually apply to adjust it, and we have had both vendors and end users contribute to it. Usually, the vendors want to add the features that they've just created to benchmark a competition with. But obviously, if we get enough of them, then that's creates a kind of scale in its own right.
And maybe if I want to jump to what really matters for the customers and the end user, because we have a privilege to have Jennifer. Regarding this approach of dam systems, of course, we will talk about some of the trends around AI, etc. But alongside the years, what makes for you finally a strong dam system? Dam system that brings you something to manage any type of your files regarding your experience.
So I think the concept is changing. Digital asset management systems are really digital asset management programs that should be driven by strategy. Like, what are you trying to resolve? And oftentimes the answer is that we want a centralized place for our assets, but sort of the next part of that is, what are you trying to resolve? Do you have rights management issues or a need for more robust rights management? Are you an international company that needs to be able to distribute assets across many different countries in a centralized way? Um, and so there's, I guess, like two use cases. So there's a lot sort of orbiting the system itself that needs to be hammered out. We talk a lot about governance. What are the different roles that will be impacted by bringing a digital asset management system? And I think, again, I think the idea is changing, but I think more than ever, based on how technology is moving, DAM really needs to kind of be an integrated system or practice within your company that kind of like feeds out to different business purposes. And then in terms of the technology, from where I'm sitting, despite the enthusiasm around artificial intelligence, I'm still looking for a dam that has really strong base capabilities, taxonomy management, searchability. If your company can't find the assets in the dam, then you've kind of failed there. And right now, a lot of dam practitioners are seeing, I think there's applications for AI, but I think right out of the box, a lot of vendors kind of really push the AI, say tagging capabilities, and they're not really necessarily something that's very useful for a lot of us in the trenches as it stands right now, without being able to feed your data sets into your systems to kind of smarten them up.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a good point. Something you also see on our side by Activo as we are doing many projects across the industries, wherever there are retailers, brand luxury agencies. We see very often, and that's maybe a challenge that has been missed by DAM systems. They are searching folders, because they want your. It looks like easier for them to organize the assets. And as you are seeing, we have metadata. We'll see with Paul much more deep dive with that. But in fact, we do not see at that moment, even with a best breed of technology at that moment in the market to map this keywording with a taxonomy, and also the capabilities finally to, as for example, we're in France. I see nothing that works in French, to be honest, because you have different languages. Okay,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure to get the expense to see the sun, etc., or something like that brings some things. Are you okay with me alongside this connection between vocabularies, taxonomies, and AI capabilities to facilitate the job of a librarian or data manager?
So you mean that, like, do you think that they can replace a dam manager, or do you think that that like re-emphasizes the role of a dam manager? I'm not sure I
Yeah,
understand.
I think it's both of them. So finally, AI can be much better integrated, not just a piece of technology, but alongside the control vocabularies inside the taxonomy, as for example, which is, today we have a cloud of tags, etc., and sometimes with it brings nothing, in fact. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the trick, and I think especially for companies that are new to DAM, I think they are enthusiastic about getting into that AI space without potentially recognizing that there's this middle piece of building the taxonomy and the controlled vocabulary, and then potentially even a business glossary, to kind of get it all the pieces. And that definitely is labor that requires, because you're working with a company's terminology, their nomenclature, right? And then sort of moving that into something that can potentially smarten up the AI. So in that case, and I'm sure this isn't just about like tagging and DAM, this is sort of across the board, but there's like a lot of potential education across, up to leadership to understand the steps involved to kind of get to that sort of sweet space or with AI, but also just like amongst your stakeholders as well. Like, and I'm also wondering if there's like opportunities to like leverage that like really good metadata and taxonomy that dam systems often have, and like leverage that like in other ways and well, whether you're feeding up into a taxonomy management system, et cetera, that can kind of, again, you're building those layers that kind of help facilitate the AI.
mm. And so, because of course, I think that's a hot topic for you, Paul, and especially just 1 week before IPTC and C2PA Summit. We know that you are one of the experts in the visual things, whether it's coming from this camera or from a smartphone or something like this. Or uh, how do you see this DAM market alongside traceability, C2PA, authenticity, etc., and alongside everything we had together last year?
That camera, by the way, went to the moon and back recently, or
We saw that. It was
uh,
fantastic.
uh, a family member of that camera, actually. So, pretty impressive trip. Yeah. Well, before I answer, I just want to bounce back on something Jennifer said. I think was interesting that she, and I'm paraphrasing, so apologies if I say I misinterpreted, but you seem to say that you haven't seen yet a dam outside of AI functionalities, but a dam that actually fulfill its promises to the core currently. Is that what I heard? Um,
No, no, I think there is dams that have great like metadata management and taxonomy functionality. I think that for me still remains like the one of the highest priorities in terms of selecting a piece of technology, because essentially you're building something where people can find things easily. um, I will say that I've noticed now, not just with dams but with other pieces of martech technology, that the use of the word taxonomy or sort of promising on the AI tagging is really prioritized in the pitch. And I think that can be to the disadvantage of the customer, because essentially, if you don't know what you don't know, you may purchase something that essentially is not going to live up to that promise. And so that is, yeah, so I beg your pardon, that's what I meant.
All right. So
Just to come in there, I've seen a few dams that have functionality in terms of control vocabularies that are worse than systems that were released about 15, 20 years ago. I actually think there's a dumbing down of metadata because everybody's been told, oh, the AI will deal with it, and it won't, basically. And I think a lot of digital asset managers, such as Jennifer, I know I've seen you through on a few of your LinkedIn posts, Jennifer. Yeah, there's frustration at the fact that the metadata capabilities in some of the dams, especially the ones that have been released fairly recently, are not that great, and they need to get better. Basically, would be my opinion.
Yeah, it's a really kind of surreal experience right now because it almost feels, for lack of a better word, almost like gaslighting because you talk to the support team about like, what's the taxonomy capabilities? What's the metadata management capabilities? Can I feed in my data sets into this? And there's seemingly like a kind of switch in terms of like understanding those core concepts, which makes me think, well, is the AI powerful enough to do that? But, we've really been trying our best and we're still really relying on those kind of core structures to make the system work with the hope that essentially we can kind of keep building that layer to kind of get it so we're be able to sort of leverage our efforts and automate some things.
So, a question, you know, when we think about AI and DAM and all these systems that work together, aren't we talking about going from more of a passive repository to sort of an active and intelligent engine that is evolving? So even if we put something in, I mean, it's not like we're putting one piece of AI on top of something. It's pervasive throughout all the systems, really, isn't it? Or it should be, right? More dam vendors are incorporating different AI components into their solutions. And then everyone, of course, is using AI on top of everything else. So it should evolve, right?
Yeah,
Should
I,
keep
I agree,
learning.
completely agree in that it's not just about a system now, it's like about an ecosystem. And so, yeah, I think that's how DAM survives now. It's just getting the technology to talk or the data to talk. Yeah, no, I'm with you 1,000%.
Yeah, and thank you, Enrica, because of course, you have, as you said, you have the experience of different system, and especially we're talking about the ecosystem, we're talking about the peer. We know that on our side, we see much more AI capabilities inside PIM system, which are more data driven. So we have also a lot of stack of marketing everywhere, just like I think all of you already saw the Scott Brinker map, crazy map with thousand and thousand of solutions, and the dam is you just need to get a zoom to see where it is. So what you explain alongside this growth of content and etc. ecosystem, dam team, etc. Uh, does the dam is the dam always as a main piece of technology to be used, or as for example we see retailer more and more using some cloud storage, so it can be even some bugs. We see here, I saw some agencies moving from DAM to bugs, or some more cloudinary, which are more cloud storage. What's your vision and experience alongside this market today?
Yeah, I sort of see it, and I read a lot of Scott Brinker's. He's, the godfather of the MarTech landscape. And I think, when he started, it was, a few hundred companies, then it was a few thousand. Now we have to have our own, he had to create his own MarTech landscape for just AI. And
Yeah.
so all of these things are, again, evolving. Nothing stays the same. And I think one of the things he most recently talked about is building, I have to look at my notes to get him to quote him properly, but it was like a system of truth and a system of context. And I think then there's still, we had a system of intelligence, and how these things kind of work together There's not one layer of anything that we can use today. So again, I think DAM is a DAM solution is always going to be part of this, but how many different components are integrated into it, or what are we using to sort of feed that system? It's never just one solution, right? And that's the problem when marketers look to get the, what do we call the shiny object syndrome? We need the new tool. We need this tool. You don't
Yeah,
always need that tool. You need the functionality. You need to map to
correct.
the business
Yeah.
problem that you're trying to solve. And oftentimes there's something existing that can do that with something you have. And as they evolve, it's solving those new challenges. So I think, I don't know if I really answered that question, but it's not just one thing anymore, and it's not just a layer. There are multiple layers where all these technologies sort of live today.
I really agree with that again as a practitioner. And I think we still need some kind of like system of record, source of truth. And I think what we're seeing like on the ground is there's so many applications that have like dam like including cloud storage have like dam like capabilities. It's kind of like cannibalizing like that sort of source of truth, and because folks have to use those applications or the server, it kind of undermines the dam and the governance becomes trickier. But I do believe that like you still, yeah, it's not just one thing, but it should essentially be, there should be a source that kind of feeds out or kind of works with these different layers. I'm just reiterating what Erica just said, but I agree.
And we see many, I think all of you are sourced a couple of times when we're asking for a CMOs of this world, so what really matters, etc. So to be honest, I'm not sure if it's where are coming the numbers or the surveys, etc. But it's always AI, etc. So how you can breed, I got this talk with Scott weeks ago, but how you can breed an experience with AI today, and so that maybe can make the dam great again or something like that. I don't know. But I see more and more some whispering around that. So we don't have any standards, more or less. We have no idea or what can be the future, by the way. When you are looking at the JP Morgan vision over the next 10 years, they said that we are just at the beginning. So what can be the future? So, and more or less, this is also something with Paul and the C2P organization and the IPTC1 to bring some milestones inside DAM systems. And today, for any customers, it's super difficult to track the assets. I saw, I was at a DAM vendor event 2 weeks ago, and so they are trying to put to mark up the files, to get some, to identify, to find what the authenticity of the images. Are you okay with that, Paul?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The system of truth, right? So it's kind of rather easy to protect truth when it's in a wall garden, right? So whatever is in your dam, you have control over it, the metadata, the size, the croppings, and everything like that. But once those assets leave your dam and go into circulations, which is the reason they were created, right, is to be shared and circulate, then a lot of things can happen to them. And more recently with AI, even more, because it's becoming easier for people to just take an asset and change it completely with just one prompt, and looks perfectly real. So everything crumbles when it leaves the dam, and so or potentially crumbles. Studies from companies like Imatag show that, for example, 85% of websites automatically scrap the metadata of images, and that's embedded in CMS systems and automatically and things like that. So it becomes important to reunite somehow those traveling assets, the published assets, with the ground truth that you have inside your dam. And that's done with a couple of things. Traceability is obviously very important, so you can link back those assets to your ground truth, but also finding metadata or creating metadata that showcase, explains, and reveals the provenance. One key attribute of trust is to know who is at the origin of the creation of an asset, and so a standard like C2PA delivers on that necessity. And so it's another maybe layer of metadata that needs to be installed, but something that again relates back to the ground truth of the assets that we can
And
find.
regarding your experience, because during the last 2 years at Undam, we saw two use cases, just like AFP here. We also met the guys from Reuters. So what do you think this is the right path to take to mark up the files that we ingest, which is a challenge regarding the camera, etc., or we have to mark up the file at the output channel, for the output channel, just to mark up the files that you will share, you distribute. What's your thoughts?
It depends on your workflow, right? So for the uh, news business workflow, actually twice, is important. Once you receive it from the field, so you have a record of what got into your system. And so news agencies like AFP or AP will maybe crop a little bit or certainly add some metadata information before they distribute it. So you want a record of what came into the system, and you also want a record of what you've been sending out to your customers as well. But in other situation, a brand, for example, product images or anything like that, might not care so much about getting a snapshot of where the image came from because it's probably a studio or anything like that. But certainly have it as before it's being distributed to resellers or partners around the world to make sure that there is the ground truth version of it, so that if it's cropped, manipulated, changed, if the metadata is changed or anything like that, then you have that as a reference.
Yeah.
This is becoming even more important, by the way, because of legislation. The EU is this August is going to require that any image that's been either created or manipulated with Gen AI needs to be labeled as such, as well
Yeah.
as the state of California is doing something similar. So in the metadata that enters and that is being handled by dams, that information is going to be required to be there and then stay with that file through the life of the file, whether it's wherever it's been published or shared.
You're right regarding these regulations. I think you are aware, Rika, we're also in the PIM system, the digital passport, etc., to track the life cycle. So on your side and regarding your great experience, we're in touch with so many customers. What incredible technology finally people are waiting for at the end of the day, because we saw so many things. We saw so many people, they are testing. Okay, we have to test how many years. It's still very often a proof of concept of things. So what's your experience and feedback from customers?
Yeah, I think, as Paul was talking, I kept thinking about, we're talking a lot about, the ingesting of the data and how we're using the data, but think about the power that these solutions are offering. For example, a retailer. Imagine the speed of onboarding or the syndication or, the ability to scale so much faster with solutions like, I'm going to call it a modern dam or a modern PIM that has some major AI capabilities, and it's integrated with other solutions that really enable that. Yes, we have to be aware of what the AI images mean, how they were created, but think about the power and the scale that this kind of enables, that teams that never had that before. Everything was so manual. Even when we said they were, automated, they weren't really. You had to load all those things manually. But I think people are hungry for this. I think they're hesitant, with good reason, because again, so often we buy solutions that we maybe don't need yet. But I think that teams and organizations are hungry for the new solutions that are solving these challenges, the speed at which they have to produce content, share content, update content, whether it's a news organization, a paper, or a retailer. I think they're hungry for it.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, because Ralph, you were talking at the beginning where some open specifications, but do we think that we have to upgrade some of them or to add some of them in order to stump to measure what the impact of AI and dam system? Because we see a lot of things, a lot of people are talking. So do you think that finally we have also to change the way to to compare dam systems. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's kind of coming in a little bit. Well, yeah, quite a lot. I think the interesting thing that's happening at the moment, and there's not much interesting that happens in dam. I think over the 30 years I've been doing it, I've come to the conclusion. But one of them is that you've got this divergence of thoughts about what dam is. Um, so I'm talking to a couple of vendors who are seeing the interface, the primary interface to their dam is through as a prompt. Basically, you use it like an LLM. Um, then there are other people who don't agree with that and think it's the conventional grid of thumbnails and you use the prompts in the back end basically to generate metadata and things like that. Then there's a third aspect um, which is quite interesting, which is this intersection with knowledge management. Um, and one vendor I've been talking to, um, they're now looking to analyze the actual constituent content within the assets in the dam. So, in particular, obviously, this is things like documents, PDFs. You can actually pull apart the text content and the images, and if it's video, obviously, it's the audio track or the video track, and then start actually doing analysis of the assets themselves. And there's these three divergent strands, if you like, and potentially you can see those evolving into things that are, yeah, basically a kind of breaking apart of DAM as this overall right. We'll have this thing that manages our stuff into these three different approaches, where it's like the conventional classic dam that we're all used to now, or it's a dam that you kind of operate through email, through Slack, just through a natural language interface, or as a knowledge management tool. Yeah, and I said there's a lot of diversity of opinion on those points.
It seems to me that with AI, something um, surface with the dam industry in general. Whether the dam is like we've been talking about more here today, is a repository of assets that are ground truth and to be untouched, but eventually indexed and searchable and shareable. Or do we plug in some kind of creative tools into the dam so that we can manipulate those assets, change and adapt them, make them more dynamic? Erica was talking about that. So when I look at the dam universe right now, there seems to be these two schools of what a dam should be. One is it should be this sort of protected environment where assets come when they're finished being assembled and structured and corrected, and so they can be searchable and used as is. And then this is the other school that comes in and say, oh well, let's use that as the start to be able to dynamically change those assets when needed, if necessary, to pull them and things like that, which eventually obviously changes the core of what a dam is. I don't know, Jennifer, is that you think a correct perspective on the situation?
Let me just sort of reiterate to make sure I understand what you're proposing. So, like, I mean, so essentially you're talking about like what I guess is now termed like modular content, where like you have like an asset and then like all of the sort of respective pieces kind of like tied to it. Or is there something else that you're proposing as like as a future? Like, I definitely can see that within like certain situations that I've been in where the creative applications sort of start to, I keep using the word cannibalize, but kind of cannibalize the dam, because like they have these kind of like dam light, like Adobe Creative Suite, you can create a little library in there. And, Canva is used, across my entire company. And so like they build libraries right into there. And if your plugins don't work well between the dam and those creative applications, and it's been my experience that they often don't, those creative applications start to kind of win out, if you will, in terms of being kind of replacing the role of the dam. I'm not sure if that answers what you were asking.
Well, so not replacing, but intervening. So it's kind of the age-old question. I'm sure Ralph has gone over for the last 30 years. Is how many version of the same assets do you have in your dam, and how many do you actually need? And so,
Right.
do you have a dam that allows you to create new version, or do you have a dam that allows you to protect the final version and what should be the only version that's being used?
Yeah, I think it should be the former, but like I think you have to have a system that can technically manage that, and of course the metadata. And then I think there's also a change management issue here, like in terms of thinking about using dams or something that's married to a dam to kind of help more with that automation of what you have versus creating multiple versions of things to feed out to your respective channels. So that's definitely something that I've experienced is sort of not just the technical limitations, but also the change management and sort of, explaining that this isn't necessarily about, I wouldn't say job loss, but it's just a new way of working. It's a new way of thinking about creating content, I think.
Yeah, I really like this approach of the creative operations, by the way, because um, it's with Rough, we see sometimes many vendors they are running after the technology to okay, now everybody's using Canva, so we have to connect with Canva.
Right.
But if you are ever try searching in Canva is a pain, so it's you have to be lucky to find something. They are trying to do some integrations. So at the end of the day, something we see is of course, Canva has changed the world of creative operation because you can do everything with that, you know, and it's a little bit just like Ralph and Paul and I think all of you. I started with Photoshop One. Adobe was promising a lot of things, and at the end of the day, we are still some business model or things like that. By the way, but in fact, um, and one of the experiences, and especially for agencies, we have very large agencies. We have today a Photoshop file is minimum 5 gig. Okay, so how you can work with DAM and Photoshop. So okay, of course, we know that we have some plugins just like Santa Cruz, Hub, etc. But it's so slow inside the Adobe or InDesign things that I see many designers they are just working Canva, get some output, download and upload. So does it make sense to connect this DAM system? Does it make the DAM smarter to connect with a Canva or things like that? So what's your thoughts at the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Erica's point too, is like, yes, Canva is really popular right now amongst designers, but everything changes, right? And so it sort of still sort of speaks to, yeah, like where the source is. Yeah, I don't actually know the answer.
I love that we have Jennifer's perspective here because we can talk about all these amazing things and what you can do, but at the end of the day, she's the one doing the work. And so I think Jennifer, when you said, the teams are using this or that, do you really need that? I think that as a marketer who's marketed DAM and PIM and all of this, I need to listen to you and understand exactly what you need because I can put all these capabilities in to a solution and talk about all this amazing stuff you can do. If you do not need it today or even tomorrow, what what value is there? So the voice of the customer is so important. So I love that we have Jennifer to kind of say like, okay, guys, you know, let's remember what we're doing here.
We just see also just because in 1 week it will be an AV show in Vegas, or which is the biggest trade show for video post production, broadcast, etc. And so we have a couple of customers working with video files, and today 5 minutes of 4K, it's a 50 gig. Okay, and we see that it's not huge. It's just something you can do or in your pocket. But we saw that as soon as you try to upload a couple of his files in the cloud, my gosh, you have the time to take free coffees, to get a lunch, etc., to get a preview. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, broadcasting is a different beast, isn't it? Like that's where MAM and DAM really are still so strong. Yeah, I think with the sort of more creative, more lightweight assets that can kind of move around so easily, it's less so.
And the reason why I like MEM system, because in fact, when you are a large agency here, I see with Altav in France, Ogilvy Agency, etc., they have hundreds of terabytes. InDesign package is gigs of files. And it's super difficult to. By the way, Canva find the issue of that, but you have no more InDesign file. Okay, but as soon as you want to stay with InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, it's a massive work. So the only thing you can do is to work on your laptop or on a MAM system with local storage, etc. But it's always a challenge for DAM system. We saw so many technologies alongside the years, just like WebDAV from Adobe, checkout, check-in, checkout, log, check-in, etc., etc. And processes alongside the team is not so easy. So I don't know exactly the right path to take, and we can measure that. But reason why I think maybe your thoughts, Raf, DAM can be a lot of things. We see also a lot of brand management. Does it make sense to do what Canva is doing inside DAM or not? So finally, a strong DAM system is a core DAM. So what do you think to compare DAM system with their capabilities to connect, to edit, etc.?
I'm not sure whether it's I mean, it really depends on what you're doing, doesn't it? I think we may be getting to the point where the definition of DAM is going to become so wide that it has to break apart into different constituent products. That's always been on the cards, and people have resisted it mainly because of the complexity. But I think, yeah, over the next few years, that may well be come to pass, that people just say this field is now, it's too diverse for it to be covered by one single
Yeah.
all-encompassing digital asset management
That could be a good
description.
project for Dan News, right? To create those new categories and
Correct.
Yeah, great. 3 journals, brilliant. Yeah.
So as we are a couple of minutes at the end of this talk, so I'd like from each of you what can be here for this year, one word regarding what you're rating for DAM systems, or more on the customer perspectives, or what really matters. We're talking about DAM, but it's maybe something different. So what can be the future of DAM regarding your experience?
I mean, my wish is that we can use that, dam systems should have highly structured metadata and taxonomies. And I'd love if we're not like integrating technically, if we can use that data to potentially help forward AI aims, but potentially also feed that data into a larger kind of data ecosystem. Could the connectivity not just be like a CMS dam integration, but could the connectivity be like through the taxonomies, for example? So that's just something that I have always hoped for.
I think my last words would be, really start to think of DAM as truly moving from passive storage into active intelligence, and enable that evolution.
guys, what I'm gonna say. Provenance, authenticity, traceability for dams to become even more important into the trust foundation of our society in general, so that we have a base of foundations where we can verify and confirm the source of content that we're looking to or seeing or consuming, and making sure that what we're seeing is either real or edited or fabricated, but at least we know that information so we can make the proper decisions when we see them.
Thank you. So, of course, at the end of the day, it's Raf, it's up to you and myself. So, from your so great experience of more than 20 years, analysis, deep dive, user perspective, so what can be on your side the future of DAM? And maybe something you
Uh,
can ask to the vendors because you know them.
yeah, I mean, what would be really good is the end of wheel reinvention in digital asset management. This sort of amnesia that seems to infect the vendors and the users. On the user side, the client side tends to be, oh, we've never done this damn thing before. And on the vendor side, it's where what Jennifer was talking about before, where basically there's metadata capabilities that were built 20 years ago, and that everyone should know about, and that some newer vendors don't seem to understand. So it would be good for people to, assimilate properly all the lessons from the past and history not to repeat itself. And I realise that's a bit of a big ask I'm making here, but
Yeah, still a lot of things to do. So, by the way, I think on my side, I will say you don't have one damn system. It's always because many customers are asking for, okay, what is the right path to take with a better, etc. I say every time it's not a race because every customer has a story, in fact. So you can manage content for an heritage. You can be a brand luxury, you can be an agency here. So it's all about use cases at the end of the day. And we do think reason why we are not in a way to share a map where who is the best, in fact, because we know that even if some consulting company are doing some good job, it's I'm not sure this is the way to compare, in fact. Okay, and you have so many customers across the world. When you are brand luxury, just like AVMH, of course, you can afford more or less everything you want. On the other side, it doesn't mean that maybe you don't have maybe the good dam because it's very often it's failing due to the governance, which is very important. It's failing very often because you don't have a people, librarians, dam manager, and hopefully I would say in the international markets, and especially US and UK, you have this knowledge, this culture to manage dam systems. We see very often in Europe and especially in France, you can find multiple dam system, PIM system inside the same company. Yes, you can have a dam dedicated for product, one for the heritage, but not 3, 4 dam system as we are seeing today. The other thing is also, I really like the fact to get a disruptive approach. Okay, what can be the one more thing? It was the 15 years of Apple this week. So how you can make, and we always said that this thing is the best integration of software and hardware. I'd like from a DAM vendor to make the best integration from technology and user perspectives. I will say, of course, it's easy to say the one more thing, but well, also to think about our world and planet, so sustainability. And I think it's very important, even if we know that the impact is a few percentage, but everybody of us, it's also dam vendors, because we are talking about more cloud systems, cluster, etc. We have to think about the future of our kids, which is important also to think about this sustainability approach, which is for me very important. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
thank you.